Compass Mining is your trusted partner in Bitcoin mining. Whether you're investing in one machine or thousands, our customizable solutions are tailored to meet your needs. We are your experts in Bitcoin mining, offering a platform where individuals and businesses can purchase hardware, host machines, and access a range of ancillary Bitcoin mining services. We also specialize in large-scale site development and data center operations. Discover more at compassmining.io and see how we can power your success today. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel McNallie Money, the official home of power mining analysis. A very event-filled morning with Bitcoin retaking $91,000 US. Boy, has the sentiment turned quickly. The bulls are back, and that's what we're going to be discussing in today's presentation. In addition to that, yet again, more good news out from Soluna Holdings. A lot to talk about. Before we get into it, take a second, smash the like button, guys. Big help to myself and the channel. Anthony loves it. If you're not already subscribed, McNallie Money, feel free to join and let us know in the comment section below. Did you see this coming? Did you think the rally was over? Or have you been dollar cost averaging, building up your positions and taking advantage of this recent pullback for what appears to be new all-time highs on the horizon? With that being said, let's get into today's video. Okay guys, so here we go. Tuesday morning. What a great day for Bitcoin, stocks in general, and of course the Bitcoin miners. Anthony, Bitcoin has retaken $91,000 US. You and I have been texting each other back and forth all morning here as we took 89, 90, eventually 91. We have pulled back a few $100s now, just shy, sitting at 90,800 as of the time of filming. But boy, has this put some life into the Bitcoin mining stocks. We see many of the miners up double digits, with some of the top performers up in excess of 20% on the session.
Yeah, great day for Bitcoin, great day for the Bitcoin miners, especially. And we've talked many times about this volatility on a day by day with Bitcoin itself. But if you look at the medium long term effects of Bitcoin, you can only see it going one direction. As long as you can manage the day-to-day volatility, and it's quite significant. You look on a day-to-day, it's up over 3% today, up probably close to 8% in the last 4 or 5 days. So, but the mining stocks today, even more volatile than Bitcoin. And we're seeing, like you say, some of them actually over 20% up on the session so far. And we're still only, 3 hours into the session.
Yeah, we certainly are. Now, we've talked about Bitcoin miners acting as a leverage proxy on Bitcoin. I know in my own account today, Anthony, Bitcoin up maybe 3.5%, 4%. My account at one point was up 14%. So we are seeing that 3 to 4 times leverage. Obviously, people enjoy it on the upside. People complain about it on the downside, but it does seem the miners are more volatile and acting as that leverage play that we saw in the last cycle. Now, you've been very excited with these movements today, Anthony. Your portfolio's up quite handsomely. You actually went out and picked up a new car, it looks like, over there in Dubai.
Yeah, I thought it was time to treat myself. Doing really well at the moment. So I thought it was nice to get a little run around while I'm out here. And hopefully you guys can appreciate it.
There you go. I think mine's still on delivery. I might have to pay some extra tariffs or something to get it into Canada here. But in all seriousness, Anthony, one of the companies we've been talking about a lot this week, Soluna Holdings, they've been putting out press releases almost daily. Another big one today in relation to Project Dorothy 2, expanding their Bitcoin hosting side of their business.
Yeah, I mean, it's getting a bit regular. This now, it's literally every other day we're getting a new update from Soluna. But another good update today. Remember, we talked about Dorothy 2 energizing in a recent podcast, and now they've just announced a 5 megawatt hosting deal with Blockware. To expand that Bitcoin hosting business that they have there already. I mean, we talked, only a few weeks ago about them taking on a new client, Bit Digital, and hosting, significant amounts of their miners. Now, this deal today with Blockware, approximately 1,500 of the S21 miners are going to be hosted at Project Dorothy. And they're targeting a deployment of this 5 megawatts, which began today and it's expected to ramp up on the 1st of June. And Blockware, anticipates deploying something like 250 to 350 petahash at this site. So good business for Blockware, great business for Soluna. They come up with these deals there, and this looks like another good project that's going to reap some dividends when the revenues start coming through from it.
Yeah, it definitely is. John's been on the podcast a number of times. He's obviously got a long-term vision, confidence that they can right the ship, so to speak, at Soluna. Now, speaking of long-term vision, Anthony, we don't do a lot of technical analysis. I don't spend my time or my hours looking at charts, but I do try and think through this Bitcoin evolution or thesis on a more macro scale. I've given it some thought based on our recent podcasts here, some of the trends we're seeing emerging on a global scale. And last night I put this tweet together essentially outlining kind of over the next 6 months or so, my high level thesis for Bitcoin and the Bitcoin miners. Now, many of these bullets we've already seen starting to emerge. You and I have talked about these themes. We've got some supporting documentation next up in the video, but this is what we believe may occur with the Bitcoin miners here, you guys. Again, not financial advice. We've talked about equities, obviously, in free fall right now in fears of tariffs, trade wars, and the global M2 or money printing that's going on. As a result, we've heard many news outlets and prominent individuals in the space talk about Bitcoin as digital gold or a safe haven asset. And this decoupling we've seen from traditional indices like NASDAQ and SPY. I think this is going to continue, the snowball effect essentially becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy as more people take money from equities into Bitcoin. The delta between the two gets bigger and bigger. More people start to think this is a good move, so on and so forth. From there, we think Bitcoin will achieve a new all-time high above the 109. We've talked about us being almost in this elbow or this bear trap we saw in the 2021 cycle, at which point Bitcoin price appreciation is going to start to make the margins on the miners look very attractive. Now, we've talked about this phenomenon, and I'll pause here for a second, Anthony. Early cycle companies like MicroStrategy, for example, that are buying Bitcoin below the cost of production look very favorable to investors. Why would you want to buy a miner that can mine at $40,000, $50,000 a coin when you could buy a whole Bitcoin for 20 or 25,000? However, as we move through this bull cycle, we've talked about the margins. We've talked about the break-even cost of these miners based on their more efficient fleets, their access to cheap or low-cost power. They start to look very attractive as the price of Bitcoin goes up. So this is where the miners come into this thesis. I'll take a pause here and get your thoughts.
We've seen a few of the miners who've released their earnings for that last quarter of 2024, and there was some, really good indications there, especially from the likes of IREN, who managed to own, not only have the most efficient fleet in the market, but some of the cheapest energy at the Childress site, taking advantage of the market rates in Texas, and they were able to mine a Bitcoin around about, $40,000. When you look at Strategy's recent purchase and look at what we said yesterday on the podcast, I think their average price now for a Bitcoin is 67,000. So these miners are able to, some of them are able to mine Bitcoin, lower than that that average price that Strategy have paid for all their Bitcoin. So, it's a real indication that miners are, really turning the screw and getting the most efficient fleets out there to help them achieve these levels of margin at the moment. Q1 will from a margin perspective should show some really good numbers across the board. It's when we start looking at some of the other costs that are going to be incurred and some of the valuation of Bitcoin, because it didn't do too well between the 1st of January and the end of March. And where miners were able to take advantage of that last quarter of Bitcoin price, they're not going to be able to take that advantage in the first quarter of 2025. From a cash perspective, at the current price today, a lot of these miners will be able to keep the wheels turning, pay the bills that are required paying, and have an element of a margin in there. And so, at 90,000, it benefits the miners at the moment.
Yeah, it certainly does. Now, speaking of margins, I wanted to quickly bring up hash price. We've seen this increase as well, Anthony, up in the $47 range. Now, you and I were reporting, I think maybe 2 weeks ago, it was down in the $37, $39 area. So this is a significant jump, 25% for these miners right off the top. Compass Mining makes Bitcoin mining accessible to everyone. Start mining in as little as 48 hours with our turnkey hardware, online and mining directly to your Bitcoin wallet within 2 business days. Find out more at compassmining.io and get started now.
Yeah, it's a welcome jump, and hash price is important. I mean, it's a fact. It's based on the Bitcoin price, and also based on the global hash rate. So $47 a day. It's still less than half the amount at the pre-halving last April. It was $110 they were achieving pre-halving. That went down to 60, and then we've just seen it gradually being eaten away and eaten away in terms of, really because the difficulties just consistently increased. And we've seen it increase to an all-time high at the last change, which was just 3 days ago, went up to 123 trillion. We're expecting now difficulty potentially could come down in 11 days' time. So already they're suggesting now, because it's taking a lot longer than 10 minutes to mine a block, that means, there's been a reduction in the number of miners on the network, and it has come down. If you look at the 7-day moving average in terms of miners on the global network now, we're at 865. That's come down. It was well over 900 literally a week ago, as we saw the all-time high in difficulty. That potentially could come down by about 7% in 11 days' time, but it's too early to say with any accuracy how much it's going to come down. But the suggestion at the moment is it's taking longer to mine a block, and therefore difficulty will balance that and make it slightly easier for miners to achieve that 10-minute time frame. And that way the difficulty will come down. As we get close to that date, we'll update further on sort of, hash price and difficulty to try and get more of an accurate read of where it's going to be. But as the closer you get, the more volatile the difficulty gets. So it's an interesting dynamic.
It certainly is, and really a perfect storm for the miners. Hash price going up, difficulty going down. Now, we've talked about this as well on the channel, Anthony. Ideally, what the miners want is a big, rapid, or quick move in the price of Bitcoin before that difficulty adjustment can occur, and they can obviously take advantage of that increased hash price. Now, this further supports our thesis here, this 6-month view. As hash price, margins, Bitcoin price all appreciate, obviously capital and investors are going to start looking at the miners once again. We've seen views, we've seen sentiment, confidence in the sector gone over the last few months. But as these margins and numbers start to improve, our theory is investors potentially who are spooked from other sectors where these tariffs and trade concerns are rampant may start to come back into the Bitcoin miners. Now, where this gets interesting, retail investors are not the only ones observing these minor metrics, and we've actually seen countries starting to get involved. So we know Bhutan and Bitdeer have a relationship. We've just seen Hut 8 Corp partner up with Eric Trump to launch American BTC or American Bitcoin. And we're starting to get rumors now, Anthony, that other countries, including China and Russia, are also bolstering their national hash rate. Now, we talked in Fort Lauderdale about the fact that these centralized pools and hash rate really are a national security concern if countries start to adopt Bitcoin on a main or large scale, like these strategic Bitcoin reserves. They definitely want to have a controlling interest in the global hash rate in order to protect that blockchain. And now, in addition to all of that, we've got the AI infrastructure data center component. We spent last week talking about the value of these megawatts and watts as they are. So you put all this together, Anthony. The title or thumbnail of the slide was "The Bulls Are Back." But this is why we've seen such a quick change in sentiment really over the last few days.
Yeah, it's just an ongoing story about the decoupling away from the effects of Bitcoin decoupling from the Nasdaq, and even on CNBC today, I saw an interview there where all the panelists were suggesting that there was a move more into the Bitcoin side of things now for investments, and it was talking more of institutions and from nation states moving into that. So it's only supporting what we've been saying on the podcast for the last few months. To be honest with you, it seems like the news on some of these mainstream channels are sort of just playing catch up. But by playing catch up, it means it just supports what we've been saying. So there's obviously a lot more people watch maybe CNBC than our channel. So they'll be also seeing what we've been seeing for the last few months.
For sure. We've joked on the channel previously, Anthony, we are going to either be very right or very wrong with this Bitcoin miner thesis, but it does appear that we're moving in the right direction. What's also interesting, when Bitcoin is on the rise, you start to hear all these big price predictions. Bitcoin is falling. You start to hear all the bear cases. We're starting to see some very optimistic price targets come back. Standard Chartered Bank says Bitcoin could reach a new all-time high due to concerns over the Federal Reserve's independence, the M2, some of the interest rate concerns. That's also supported on our 6-month prediction list there. Max Kaiser, you actually had the privilege of sitting beside him on one of your trips to America earlier in the year. He just stated he thinks Bitcoin's going to hit $850,000 US this cycle, which to me, for anyone who's educated about Bitcoin, I think this is probably the highest price target I've seen for this cycle itself.
Yeah, I've not seen any as big as that for this cycle. I mean, in New York, where we attended the Bitcoin industry conference recently, there were suggestions there of between 180,000, 250,000, maybe by the end of 2025. And yes, in years to come, there's an expectation Bitcoin will get to $1 million, and even, Van Eyck fund actually suggested, may even get to $13 million, in a further time frame. So there's been some bullish numbers, but to say 850,000 during this cycle at the moment, that's very bullish from Max. And yeah, I was very privileged to catch up with Max at Raleigh Airport, and we were on the plane together to Nashville for the conference last year. So managed to have a great chat with him over a couple of hours whilst we were waiting for our flight. Really nice guy. Met his wife Stacey as well, and does a lot in the space for education on Bitcoin. Lives in El Salvador. Certainly got the ear of the president down there, and he's one of the sort of the OGs in the space, to be honest with you. And I didn't realize he was a billionaire, but obviously he's been in Bitcoin longer than most people that have been in Bitcoin. So there's no reason why he hasn't got a big stack somewhere and enjoying the price at the moment. If he gets to 850,000, he probably joins another type of level in the billionaires club. So good luck to Max.
I was going to say exactly that, Anthony. If he's already in the billionaire status and Bitcoin 8Xs from here, that really feeds into that self-fulfilling prophecy. As these billionaires start to see people moving up the Forbes list here, or whatever the case is, the FOMO is going to kick in, and it doesn't take a lot of billionaires to start buying Bitcoin to really move that price. Now, speaking of buying, our good friend Matt Siegel, he was on the panel with us down in Fort Lauderdale, one of the real OG analysts, or Wall Street analysts, I suppose, in the space. He just put out a tweet saying ETF inflows were the highest we've seen since January 30th. So obviously we've talked about that theme extensively on the channel, starting to see some life back there. Again, as people start to see those returns outpace maybe the S&P, NASDAQ, you would think people would start to position more money with Bitcoin exposure or the ETFs. We've also seen Jefferies come out and say they believe China and Russia are now encouraging domestic Bitcoin mining, which supports that thesis we saw about the nationalization of Bitcoin mining. Matt Siegel again coming out saying China reportedly boosting Bitcoin mining and weighing holding seized Bitcoin similar to the US as part of their strategic reserve.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's lots of good news stories out, and obviously Matthews, an analyst from Wall Street, he understands the markets better than most people that are tuning into the podcast. However, I will say it's literally just a few days we've seen this sort of like this rise, and so we need some sort of sustained inflows from the ETS. Remember, all through 2024, we saw pretty much positive inflows for the majority, more than majority of days, significant majority of days during 2024. 2025 has been slightly different. We've had probably at least an equal number of negative days outflows from Bitcoin price there. Even if we go and look at I mean, we've talked about miners being up, most of the miners are up close to 15%, some are in the 20% today. But if we look at the average from year to date, and I talked about this last week, I think it was 50%. At one point, it had gone down to 48%. Then it was back up to 50%. Today, the average is 42% down. So we've only eaten slightly into that target, just to get back to where we were at the start of the year. So we need a significant amount of increases across the board to get that closer to zero, and where we were at December.
We most definitely do. Now, I'm just taking a look at Bitcoin price just shy of $91,000, Anthony. So, as you say, this is a great start to a potential rally here, but we need a lot more green days to get back where we were a few months ago. So, let us know in the comment section, you guys, do you think this rally will be sustained? Are you buying? Are you selling? Are you holding? What's your strategy here? And how are you feeling about this recent Bitcoin price move we've seen, along with our 6-month prediction on the miners? Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you back here tomorrow.